All right. Well, we're back to discuss Mando season three, the best and worst. Obviously, this was what we would call a controversial season.
Hmm.
I feel like maybe this was probably the least liked of the three. If people were put to the fire to make that decision, and there was some good and some bad, so we just wanted to come back and kind of hash things out, get our thoughts out there. Did we want to go ahead and get us started with a ranking?
Well, my ranking for this season, I think it's the worst of the three seasons that we've gotten, but that's not to say that it's absolutely terrible. We'll go into it, but let's start with the we'll start from the worst episodes, work our way up, and then we'll end on a positive note. Um, but on a not so positive note, what's our least favorite episode? You see it on the screen.
Oh my
That's
god.
yeah, no, that's not it.
Oh my god, this was so bad. You know, I can't even say that I could see what they were doing with this because when we got to the end of the season, there was no real need for this side quest. So, what were your overall feelings about this episode?
Yeah, no, I agree. We got a little adventure. We got some new characters that I can't say that I care too much for, unfortunately. Yeah, we went on a little quest, and then the ending was enjoyable, but the rest of it was just killing time. It was really not fun, not great. It was an episode, but Felicity, you were saying earlier, there's 8 episodes in this season, and if they're going to be wasting time like this, I don't know what they're doing. So this was definitely the worst. That's all I've got to say, really.
Yeah, I mean, really, Grogu didn't do anything in this episode except help the Duchess, I guess, or the princess win some games, and got knighted in the process. Jack Black, I honestly, I guess he was supposed to be kind of the bad guy, but not really, because it ended up being Doc Brown, which that was such a waste of Christopher Lloyd coming back uh, and playing a role in Star Wars. It was a very disappointing. We got a lot of CSI type of stuff that happened
Yeah.
in this episode, which is fine if that's what you're watching. But we're watching Star Wars, so that all wasn't really necessary. One positive I could say, they did name drop Dooku in this episode,
Yeah.
but then he promptly got shocked.
Don't say his name.
No, don't say Dooku's name. And the best part of the episode was, as you mentioned, the fight between um, Bo Katan and Axe Wolves, basically to see who was going to be the leader. Even this part was disappointing for me because they basically had Mando explain why Bo Katan should be the leader and possess the dark saber instead of him. What you think about that?
Yeah, I first of all, I wish that we got more of an episode with this stuff in it. I feel like they could have drawn it out a little bit. But also it was a little bit underwhelming. They were building up to the dark saber and that handoff, and it was just kind of like, actually no, here you go. This is I'm just going to say why you should have it. I would have liked a fight or something. We did get a fight, but it wasn't between Din Djarin and Bo-Katan. But she's got it now. Overall, I hate to say it, but the dark saber ended up being, I guess, not what we expected, not what we thought it was going to be. So that was a little bit disappointing for me, but not the end of the world. But yeah, I just wish that we got more of this in the episode instead of just a few minutes at the end.
Fair enough. And I agree. So I guess we can probably move on because I don't want to waste a whole lot of time speaking about this episode, which was obviously the worst of the season.
Mm-hmm.
The next worst. was the convert, uh,
Yeah.
which I remember when this came out, and a lot of people were poo pooing this episode. And the counter was, oh, but it's world building. Okay. So basically, they showed us that Coruscant was, they showed different, things about Coruscant. Dr. Pershing was being praised for coming over and being the convert from the Empire to, trying to integrate himself into the New Republic. But this didn't really mean anything in the end. I mean, we got Elia Kane here, who was shown to be a bad guy, although I don't understand why Pershing couldn't figure that part out. He was such a smart guy, but he couldn't realize that he was being played by this former stormtrooper, I guess. And, the New Republic is basically kind of corrupt, or maybe not corrupt, but just there's a lot of pencil pushers, and they're just not really focused. So basically, this episode showed us that the New Republic sucks.
Yeah. This was such an off-putting episode because in when we watched this, sequentially, this was right after we first went to Mandalore and the Mines of Mandalore, and we were on the edge of our seats. Like, what is going to happen? We get like a few minutes of that, and then it's just a long time on Coruscant, and it was not what we expected whatsoever. They kind of sandwiched that in between the exciting stuff to get to, like you said, stuff that doesn't really matter. And if it did end up being a big part of the wider story, or if it does, maybe I'll change my mind. But it was just weird. Like this and the last episode that we talked about were just different vibes. I think overall from what we expect from the Mandalorian, and it didn't leave a good taste in my mouth personally. So a little bit disappointing as with the last one, but it goes a little bit more uphill after this. Um, yeah, but we didn't need this.
Yeah, just give us the stuff that was finishing up the Mines of Mandalore,
Yeah.
and coming back to the covert, where they were welcoming Bo-Katan into the covert, because she did bathe officially in the waters of Lake Minnetonka, and she didn't remove her helmet since she bathed, so she was redeemed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, yeah, be a part of our convert, or covert. That's kind of confusing. Our covert. They're coming back to the covert, but Pershing
Yeah.
was the convert. So that was a little bit unfortunate naming of the episode, but I guess we can kind of move on into the next episode that we want to talk about, the
Mm-hmm.
foundling. Look.
We have some thoughts.
Yeah, you know, we there was some focus on Grogu in this episode, and which is fine. Uh, the main focus was the Order 66 stuff that we got from this episode, and we found out who actually saved Grogu from the from Order 66, from the Jedi Temple, and it was Kelleran Beck, who was played by Ahmed Best. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fans were kind of excited by the jangling keys of that.
Mm-hmm.
The scene itself, the scenes of that were fine, but still, if we were looking at the season overall, kind of struggling with why Grogu needed to be back in this episode, or not back in this episode, but back in this season as a major player. So what did you think? What kind of thoughts did you have about the episode, The Foundling?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you on what you just said. From the first episode, I was like, why is Grogu here? It feels like a little bit of a cash grab. They didn't know if the show would stand on its own 2 feet without Grogu, but I feel like it kind of did a disservice to the last season. That's a whole other conversation. But finally, we were like, okay, we get some cool stuff. Order 66. This is what we've been waiting for, and it was really cool. That was awesome, but it's the rest of the episode. That's the problem. That it just didn't make us care. You know, we got to see a little bit more of the covert and how they live, and it's Bo-Katan's episode, and she's being the leader and everything. But that's not the story that I expect. That's not the story that I needed or wanted. And maybe that's a me thing. I don't know. I didn't hate this episode. There, as I said, there were some good things, but there was also some things that I didn't necessarily need.
Yeah, it turned into an episode where they were really trying to push Bo-Katan as the leader of Mandalore.
Yeah.
And we saw some, snippets of that type of stuff, but the other foundling, which I guess is who is being referenced by this title, was Paz Vizsla's foundling Ragnar, who got kidnapped by some sort of prehistoric dragon bird thing, and ended up staying in its mouth for like half of the episode, which was kind of weird. So there was some real weird stuff in this one.
Yeah.
We got our little Order 66 episode snippet from Grogu, but everything else was kind of not really needed, I guess. Yeah, we needed to see Bo-Katan's leadership, but that was just further evidence that, Din Djarin was pushed to the back of his own
Yeah.
show. So that's why we probably have it ranked a little bit on the lower end of all eight. So,
Mhm.
anything else you want to say about this particular episode?
No, I think we can move on to the next episode because I kind of have similar feelings about the pirate. It's another episode where like it wasn't bad. It just wasn't necessarily the Mando that I'm used to or that I love, the Din Djarin and Grogu. It was definitely different. But this is getting more towards the mid range of the season for our ranking. So, we get the pirates invading Navarro, and then the covert comes to save the day, basically. And then we have the little thing at the end, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a few minutes. But what were your thoughts about this episode, Felicity?
I enjoyed the episode. I struggled to remember what kind of ranking I gave it. That's probably part of the reason why we've got it in the spot that it's in.
Yeah.
I wasn't big on the pirate, the lead pirate, and I can't remember his name right now.
Gorian
But
Shard.
Gorian Shard, yeah, he just looks
Mhm.
like he's rolled in like Easter egg grass to me. Not a lot of people loved his look, but I really wasn't one of them. And he ended up not really being that big of a deal for the covert to get past. They crashed his ship. I think all of his people, just about all of his people died, except for some of the ones that were on the ground. And then he had his one dude that escaped,
Mhm.
and apparently is going to end up showing up in the skeleton crew, Vane,
Yeah.
at some point. So we can look forward to that or not. But basically, the better parts of this probably were the parts that had uh, Gor- uh, Carson Teva, where he actually goes to Coruscant and tries to get help,
Yeah.
for Navarro. But unfortunately, Navarro didn't sign the papers to be a part of the New Republic. So, again, we've got, paper pushers making decisions instead of really caring about what's going on with people. So again, showing that the New Republic sucks. So
Mhm.
and Carson Teva shows up at the covert because Skippy has some sort of beacon on. I guess he was snitching on the covert, and he's able to recruit Mando. Um, and there were some good parts about their discussion. About getting involved to save Navarro. Paz Vizsla basically does a turn. He's like, yeah, I didn't like Din Djarin and I didn't appreciate Bo Katan, but, they've shown their worth. So let's help them because we're Mandalorians. So I did appreciate that part, of the episode. Obviously we got some cool action, with the covert, in the dropship and coming down and getting rid of the pirates. We even got the armorer involved in the action.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
cool.
yeah, so there was some cool stuff in the episode, but there's definitely reasons why it's on the lower end of the season. And you had something in particular that you wanted to discuss about. I'm assuming the Bo-Katan issue. But Bo-Katan says, "Hey, I saw a mythosaur,"
Oh
and
yeah. Okay,
and
yes. Now I know what you're getting at. It was
yeah, and it's like, okay, sweetie, I saw the mythosaur. Um, sure. That's nice that you saw the mythosaur. And she asked her to take off her helmet because all of a sudden she realized because she saw the mythosaur that she walks in both worlds and she can be the leader because she saw the mythosaur, which you know there are so many things in this season where it's introduced but not necessarily paid off in the way that you feel like it's going to be paid off.
yeah.
Because, and we can talk about it more later, but we never have her see the mythosaur again. You kind of feel like with this part that you know uh, that she's going to actually ride the mythosaur, but that's not what happens.
Just, okay, you saw it, right place, right time. It's yours.
Yeah, so you're the leader because you saw it. Okay. And the dark saber wasn't mentioned at all
Yeah.
in this. So there was a lot of things that were set up or poorly set up, and poorly executed with the payoff. So I definitely would consider that to be one of them. What did you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of little moments like that, or not so little things that they just, I mean, they subverted expectations, but not necessarily in a pleasing way. Uh, so we can, there's a few instances where they do that, and we can talk about that. But do we want to move on? So we're getting more towards the higher half of our rankings.
The better stuff of the season. So yeah,
Yeah.
sure, we can move on from this one.
Yeah, so this is, we have episode one, The Apostate. Let me just get it up here. This was our intro, and this is, the beginning of our better half of the ranking. So that says something for sure. Here we go. Okay, this is the cool part. What's on the screen? We start with a pretty badass fight, and then Din Djarin comes and saves the day, which is pretty cool. And it kind of is an action packed episode, so we can break it down. But Felicity, you've been waiting so long for season 3 of The Mandalorian, and it opens up to this. What were your thoughts?
I was like, "What's happening?" Because I thought at first this kid that they had introduced, who turns out to be Ragnar Vizsla, he's getting baptized, and the baptism gets interrupted by a meth gator. A meth gator, and that's what I was calling it. I don't know if we actually got a real identification on what the thing was, but yeah, the the covert gets attacked during this ceremony, and we see the Mandos, basically pulling out all the stops, doing all the fire, the flamethrowers, and the grappling hooks, and all the stuff, all the blasters, everything, throwing it at this myth gator. But like you said, Din and Grogu come in to save the day, and they made sure they got Grogu in that shot
Mhm.
to say, "Hey, I'm here." So I mean, I thought it was an okay opening, and obviously the part with the armorer, which was kind of a repeat of a scene we'd already seen in Book of Boba Fett. If you weren't lucky enough to see that, then it was repeated for you here, and she basically confirms, yes, you're not welcome because you need to bathe in the waters of Lake Minnetonka, and once you do that and can prove it, then we'll accept you back. So
Yeah.
we were setting up him going to the mines of Mandalore to take that bath that he needed. But
Yeah, that's what I
along
thought
the
was gonna
way,
that's
yeah,
what I thought was gonna be the whole season, but, it wasn't. Continue.
yeah. After that, he goes to Navarro and
Yeah.
tries to get parts for IG-11, who was blown up. If you guys didn't remember that, and it's like, what do we need this for? And he's like, okay, well, I need a droid that's can spelunk and take readings and things like that for me. We didn't end up doing a good job with that because the IG unit just went crazy. It was kind of like a T2 moment, Terminator, where the thing wakes up and tries to attack everybody.
Yeah.
And, so that part doesn't, work out. So we have to go somewhere else to get a droid. And, it ends up being Pelimato that we go and see for Skippy. R5 ends up being the droid that he ends up using for this purpose. Uh, but we also visit Bo Katan, who I was calling Bo Karen.
Yeah, that were her vibes at the beginning of the season. She had an arc.
Bo Bo Karen, who was just sitting in her throne room eating bonbons and like, oh, everyone left me. You have the dark saber. You need to be the leader. And she truly was not worthy of being leader at this point. So after doing all these trips, then we finally go to Mandalore. We see Mandu going through that in the episode 2, Minds of Mandalore,
Mhm.
basically.
That actually comes next, so we'll talk about that in a second. But also in this episode, we get a little setup with the pirates and everything
Oh yeah,
coming.
I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we all did. But we do get this sets up a lot of things that later come in the season, maybe in different ways than we expected. But yeah, there was a lot that happened at the beginning of this season, and then some of it pays off.
Some of it does pay off.
Yeah.
Uh, the Mines of Mandalore was one of the ones that I actually enjoyed a little bit more, but ends up being a little bit more controversial, I think, for
Hmm.
people, because Bo Karen becomes Bo Katan again. She actually starts becoming useful because unfortunately, she has to end up saving Din quite a bit in this episode. Initially, you know, Mando has to, they land on the planet, and Skippy has to take some air readings to make sure it's safe because Mando and Grogu are gonna go on this adventure
Hmm.
together. Skippy gets lost, and he got attacked by these Morlock creatures, which I don't think we ever knew. I'm sure there's a name for them, and I don't remember it right off because we didn't see them again. In the season, we only saw them in this episode. So once Mando dispenses the Morlock creatures, then he fixes Skippy and takes his air readings, and it's not cursed. So they decide they're going to explore,
Mm-hmm.
the mines, and they're doing their exploring, and Mando gets caught by a really cool kind of creature, which
Yeah.
we never got an identification for. I think it was just some sort of random thing, like a General Grievous type of character, um,
Yeah.
and he wants to extract blood from Mando, is what it looks like. So Mando's in the contraption, and Grogu does attempt to use the Force to save Mando, but is unsuccessful, and Mando says, "Go get Bo-Katan." And Grogu does his magic to get out and get back to the ship, and Skippy gets him back because he's got the navigation in the computer, and they get back to Bo-Katan, and she was about to go off and say, "Hey, we're gonna get rid of him once and for all." And as soon as she sees Grogu, she's like, "Oh, what happened to Daddy?"
Who can resist?
So yeah, she got in her ship, and they go off to save Mando. And of course, she's got the feels because she's back on her home planet. But she's focused, and she even gets Grogu focused and says, "Look, you gotta lead me to him. So you gotta get over your fear." So they get down there. She handles the Morlocks with no problem. She gets to the creature, the Grievous type creature, and she whips out the dark saber. And this was the thing that made her the ruler of Mandalore,
Yeah.
supposedly, because it got taken from Mando, and then she takes it and she dispatches the character, the Grievous type character,
Yeah, it takes
and
a few episodes for that to kick in, apparently. But she
yeah,
does it.
yeah. It just sat on Mando's mind for all that time, and he was like, "Oh yeah, she did save me, so she deserves a dark saber." But anyway, so you know, once that character is dispatched and she saves him from his predicament, they find the mines of Mandalore, the living waters, and Bo is basically watching while Din is taking his bath, but he drops like a rock, drops like a rock into the water, and she saves him yet again. Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of people were like, "Uh oh." Is this starting to turn into the Bo Katan show? That's kind of where this, started.
Yeah. And it kind of did turn into that. So he was saved by her twice in this episode, but it was still a very enjoyable episode in my opinion. This is one of my favorites. We just got a lot of cool stuff. I expected this to take us all season, and it was just like, nope, episode 2, you're going to Mandalore, and you're bathing in these living waters. And that was just, I was like, whoa. The whole time I was watching it, I was very just astounded that we were getting this. And it was very cool how they did it, especially. They were setting up Bo's arc. And, originally she was salty a little bit, She didn't believe in any of this. She was Bo Karen, as you said. But then she finds her way eventually. So that's an arc that we got. Still not sure how I feel about it, but it was still cool to see. And then we get the ending with the Mythosaur, which was also very unexpected but very cool. So a lot of just neat moments in this episode. I feel like it was definitely an improvement from the previous episode, just in that we got so much cool stuff. I know you have a few thoughts as well about where this kind of ranks. We had a differing opinion. This is my number two ranking, just because I thought it was really, really, really fun. But I think you had a different viewpoint.
Not as bad as all that. I mean, I would say it was probably three on my
Okay.
if I'm looking at my rankings because and we'll get to the finale in a little bit how it compares to this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely appreciated this episode. I thought it was better, one of the better ones of the season for sure.
Cool. We can move on perhaps to the finale if you wanted to, because this is your second favorite.
Yeah, the return, because we we did talk a little bit before this about how they got kind of cutesy with some of these titles. If you were one of those people that stayed up till 3 in the morning, 3 a.m. EST, then you realize that you didn't get the title until you actually started watching. I feel like they kind of played around with us a little bit to get a little bit more engagement on these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me. That's just I have no proof to verify that. But so in this finale, we end up basically just picking it up right away because we really don't have time. I think this actually was probably one of the shortest episodes of the season, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not mistaken. But yeah, so we're going the whole time, no break for anything. So Din was captured in episode 7. So we get to episode 8, and they are, taking him to the debriefing room. Not sure what he needed to be debriefed about, but okay. Well, let's go with it. And he puts up a fight, and we get some exciting, fight scenes. And you know, we when we left off the last episode, Grogu was watching Dan get captured on the opposite side of the doors. And he did get out. We saw him get out with Bo and the rest of the, Mandalorians that had, made it. But at the beginning of this episode, we didn't see Grogu, and we didn't see how he was somehow able to sneak up. Uh, he's able
Yeah.
to sneak up on, Din's attackers in the hallway. But he's in his little mech suit. No, 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 stay away from my dad. So he helped save Din. Din had a rough season.
He's
This
been through it.
Yeah. So yeah, Den had to get saved by a lot of different people. But fortunately, actually, in this episode, we were able to see a little bit more of him having more agency and able to do, more stuff. We got some cool fights where, he was able to go 2 by 2. It was kind of like a gauntlet that you have in like a video game, where you're fighting, your enemies 2 by 2. So we got that moment, and
Mm-hmm.
we got Skippy involved again because he had to help with barrier shields, uh, and so that part was kind of fun. Obviously, the Mandalorians were trying to make sure that they could fight on the ground instead of in the air. We got Axe Woves going up into space. Although it must have been they must have been lower in the atmosphere, I'm guessing, for him to actually make it to the ship. There
Mm-hmm.
were some questions about that, but that part ended up being kind of cool. They were going to use the ship as a missile,
Yeah.
basically, into the base. Um, so they were basically gathering up all of their numbers to fight all the Beskar alloy troopers. I don't think we actually got a name for like what they were officially. I was calling them troopers. But while that's going on, we have, you know, Din and Grogu making a pact saying, hey, we've got to go after Moff Gideon because otherwise he's just going to keep chasing us.
Yeah.
So, they're going through the base. They find the clones and get rid of them very quickly.
Yeah, you're out. Like,
Yeah, Din had like the cheat code to know how to get rid of the clones in that room, and of course all the clones are Moff Gideon clones. But Moff Gideon is mad. He's like, "You killed my clones. They were going to be force sensitive." So obviously there's a boss fight. We get the Praetorian guards involved, and Grogu starts to become more of a partner to Din in these fights. They do some teamwork, which is needed when the Praetorian guards come in.
mhm.
We get some little cutesy stuff with Grogu. He has to get rid of IG 11, I 12, IG 12, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call whatever you want to call that. And he starts using the Force during the fights. Um, and of course, we get more Bo-Katan because, of course, Bo-Katan has to be the one to face off, finally against Moff Gideon. And you know, we get a scene that is very surprising. Uh, Moff Gideon actually destroys the dark saber,
Yeah.
which
That
a
was
lot of people were upset about. How did you feel about it?
yeah, I didn't feel that great about it. Originally it did feel like, whoa, this thing that like they set up last season, they just kind of shit on. They were like, no, this doesn't matter. It kind of the dark saber felt like an afterthought in a lot of these. But someone in our live stream chat pointed out that she's already kind of their leader. She's uniting Mandalore, and she doesn't need that symbol anymore. So that's an interesting way to look at it. But it was just so easy to break. It was just like, yeah, no, that whole plot is done.
Yeah, and actually, when that was said in the chat, I actually agreed with
Yeah.
that. I didn't have a lot personally invested in the dark saber. I understand what other people did, but you know, you with when you're questioning whether or not you want to be led by somebody, you're putting your faith in that person. You're not putting your faith in the thing. And it did seem like half of the people didn't really care about it anyway, or didn't even know about it. So she showed her mettle. So if they want to redo the dark saber, that could always be a thing, in another season, maybe. They didn't show it totally destroyed. It was basically like crushed, but it looks like it could have been fixed. So I didn't, you know I didn't put too much stock in it.
Mm.
But by the time we get to the end of this episode, or at least the end of this conflict, we have Bo, Din, and Grogu all fighting together because Mandalorians are stronger together against Moff Gideon and um, Moff Idiot. I want to say Moff Idiot. I think that would probably be appropriate actually. But yeah, he goes out in a blaze of glory, maybe. Uh, and then we get the Grogu force bubble scene, which kind of tugs on the heartstrings just a little bit. But we have seen Grogu do this before in a previous season. So, do you think that Gideon's gone?
That's the thing. You never know. We didn't see the body. And we thought that he was, done with last season, but obviously he wasn't. So we might still see him pop up. I think they're kind of leaving that open. Uh, but initially, I do want you to think that he's gone. So for now, I'll suspend my disbelief. Sure, he's gone.
Yeah, actually, I feel like this should be the end of Moff Gideon. For me, if we're going in the direction of Thrawn, which was teased,
Yeah,
in the season, for Ahsoka, obviously Thrawn is more of a threat. Or at least we're building him up to be that. For me, based on the way that this episode went, I feel like they kind of cleaned up a lot of stuff. And I feel like Moff Gideon should be one of those things that they cleaned up. We've had him as a villain in all three seasons. I don't think that we need to see him again. It doesn't make sense to me that we see him again. We know what his overarching plot was going to be. He wanted force sensitive clones. Um, I think that that part should be done. But you never know. It's Star Wars. No one's ever really gone. So
exactly.
they may decide to bring him back. So this was my second favorite episode. I liked Minds of Mandalore. I actually rated them probably about the same, about an 8. But I think I this one was more. I was more emotionally invested in this one. I felt like, so it wins as far as like a ranking. Even
Yeah,
though the actual numerical ranking was the same, I still feel like this was a better episode. And I know you disagree with me. You liked Minds of Mandalore a little bit better. But
exactly.
yeah, I don't think we're too far off with those. But we can move
For
on
sure.
to what I think was both of our favorite episode of the season,
For
uh,
sure.
which was the spies, right?
Yeah, spy. But yeah, exactly. There was so much that happened in this episode, and it was definitely my favorite of the season. Does feel weird to have just talked about the finale and be going back a little bit, but in my opinion, and yours as well, this was the best. This little bit I couldn't care about. It was cool. It was a little Blade Runner, but I didn't need this character specifically. But
Yeah,
everything after it.
yeah, they had to give us a little bit of a taste of Elia Kane. So and what you're thinking is, okay, well, I guess she's one of the spies that we're going to meet here. And again, I do really feel like they did the cutesy thing at the last minute to kind of, drive engagement. And I think that's why they came up with the spies as the title of this episode. But we can get into the rest of it later. Um, but we get Gideon. This is our first introduction, which is a problem. First actual introduction of him in this whole entire season was episode 7. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had talked about him, but we hadn't actually seen him or knew what he was actually doing until this episode. So that was a problem for this season. We get introduced to the Shadow Council, and we get some references to a bunch of different things. We get some prequel references with the barrier shields. We get some sequel references with the cloning stuff, and we get Commandant Hux in this Shadow Council. We get a Heir to the Empire reference with Pelion. So
Hmm.
there was a lot of references and member berries and jingling keys, whatever you want to call that stuff in these scenes. But so basically, we learn, hey, yeah, these are the remnant. They're all trying to scramble to survive. Some are doing better than others. Looks like Hux and Pelion are doing the best. And basically, Moff Gideon's in the position of having to ask them for supplies. So
Hmm.
he asked for some interceptors and some Praetorian guards. So they authorize his request, but he also makes a cardinal mistake, which is why this is the reason why I really feel like we're not going to see him again. He basically says, "Hey, since Thrawn isn't here, maybe we should select a new leader."
Yeah, he went a little bit too far. I'm glad that we're getting the Thrawn Easter eggs and shoutouts and building up to that. But he overstepped his boundaries.
Yeah, so at some point, even if he had managed to survive this season, I think that he was going to be meeting his end fairly quickly because
Mm.
he dared to question Thrawn. But yeah, so we move on, and we get to the Mandalorians coming back to Mandalore, and trying to figure out what's going on there. And this might be where the spies reference, because nobody's come out to actually explain it. I think that might be what they're actually referencing. The fact that they are like scouts on the
Oh,
planet. Spies, scouts, whatever terminology you want to use. So yeah, Bo Katan comes to Navarro basically to show the fleet and have all the Mandalorians meet each other, which obviously is a little bit testy at first.
yeah.
They they meet and they have a dinner, and she says, "Hey, we've got to pick people to from both tribes to go back to Mandalore so we can figure things out." And they do that, but before that, we get a little bit of cutesy stuff with Grogu and IG
Hmm.
12. And,
Yeah.
and how did you feel about the whole thing with IG 12? Like initially, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean it's a little bit off-putting because beginning of the season we saw him try to kill Grogu, but once he started talking with the yeses and the nos, I came around. I thought it was pretty cute, especially when he gets out and about. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a thing now. It's kind of fun. He's able to talk a little bit, as was hinted at. Yeah, so I thought that it was fun overall. I'm now realizing how short lived it really was. This is episode 7 and episode 8. They're just like, no, you're done. But it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he did need this in order to be able to keep up with the rest of the Mandalorians in episode, 8 and 7.
Yeah.
So it does kind of make sense. I am glad that they made it a short lived thing. On the face of it, I did not like him being in a mech, but once they did go to the market and there was all the yes, no, and him eating all the food and taking stuff from the vendor, that got me on board.
Yeah.
so, so I quickly got over that. But yeah, it was short lived, so it didn't take up too much of the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they get to Mandalore after they've picked the teams basically, and we find out some things. We find out that there is actual survivors of Mandalore, that have been living there, people that didn't get off during the purge. And they meet up with Bo-Katan, and she explains to them exactly what happened, how she lost the dark saber to Gideon, and
Hmm.
how things ended up the way that they did, because she surrendered, but Gideon lied obviously to her and said, if you surrender, then we can let you guys live. But no, he lied. So after that situation, we get the whole Din saying, she's my queen. Uh, which a lot of people were probably like, oh no, not again, a Game of Thrones. And more of it being the Bo-Katan show because she's the leader,
Yeah.
she's the clear leader. So she is doubting herself, but he kind of pumps her up and says, "Look, I'm going to serve you, Lady Kreese." So more of him taking a back seat.
Hmm.
And So all of these tribes get together and they travel across Mandalore, and they run into another meth gator or whatever type of type of thing. Oh, but along the way, we do get the scene with Paz Vizsla and Axe Woves playing chess, and Paz Vizsla obviously had no chill, and he was questioned about being a primitive, and he just was like, "Nope, we're fighting. That's it. We're fighting. You insulted me, and I am not going to stand for it." So they fight, and when it gets to the point where it could possibly go the wrong way, Grogu steps in his IG-12 and says, "No, no, stop
No,
fighting."
no. Yeah, I feel like that was a really good way to end that fight where he kind of united them. And this was the episode of uniting all of the different Mandalorians that we've seen thus far. So that's where it pulled on my heartstrings personally. I was like, okay, we're together. They're a team, and a little bit of a short-lived team, but maybe we'll see more in the future for sure. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, so we get accosted by the meth gator, and the meth gator forces us to and yes, I say meth gator because I just think it's funny. I don't know what the hell the creatures are. There's just so many. That's one of the things about the season. We just had so many random creatures showing up, and it was like, what?
It was fun though. I like seeing it.
But they get run into the Great Forge, and they're having a little bit of a nostalgic moment for the Forge, but then they get accosted by these Beskar alloy troopers, and they fight it out there. And eventually they get led into the actual base that Moff Gideon has on Mandalore. He set up camp there basically, so he can continue to strip mine this planet of its Beskar. And So we get a great scene of Paz Vizsla going out like a warrior, like a boss, like
Yeah.
a true Mandalorian. He, once they're caught, uh, and Din's captured, he is continuing to fight. Paz Vizsla is continuing to fight until he runs into the Praetorian guards, who basically stick a fork in him.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough. No, but this was a really cool scene to see him go out like this. Is very well done.
Yeah, it was cool. And you know, I don't know if we want to maybe do like some notable things about the season. Because this was the best episode, but I still had
Hmm.
problems with it, obviously. Some of this stuff could have been spread out over the season, instead of given to us in the last, next to the last episode of the season. So do we want to maybe talk about some of the things that we had a problem with overall in the season? Maybe not specific to an episode, but just
Yeah, yeah, there were some overarching things over this season that we noticed for sure that I think the audience picked up on. The first one that I think of is that it's not the Din Djarin show anymore. It's the Bo-Katan show, and that's kind of the direction they went in. But that's it didn't tickle my fancy. I'll say that.
yeah. And we did mention earlier about Grogu. There really wasn't that huge pressing need for him to come back. It really would have been better for him to stay with Luke, which brings me to another huge problem that I had. Being the Luke fan that I am, we had a couple of references to Luke, but nobody actually said his name in the whole entire season. We had references like, oh, did you teach him that? Oh, no, it wasn't me. But it was Luke Skywalker that taught him, and nobody would say that. Uh, I thought that was just weird.
Hmm.
And then, of course, once we got Paz Vizsla dying, nobody mentioned it again.
Yeah.
Nobody mentioned it again, and it was like, really? I mean, yes, I know he was like basically a prototypical Mandalorian, but he made a sacrifice, a notable sacrifice, so that they could, get out of the situation that they were in, and it was just like they totally forgot about him, and which I feel like it's even more of a misfire because that character is played by John Favreau. He voices that
Hmm.
character. So why would we not, at least, pour something out for Paz? It just was kind of weird. Um, and we've talked about the dark saber, how that was
Hmm.
so built up to be something, you know, great, but then in a fight, which, hey, I appreciated that Bo Katan actually did lose that fight to Moff Gideon. Even though we all had our complaints about her basically taking over the show, she actually lost that fight.
Yeah.
Which I thought was notable. And that doesn't come up again. Apparently, even though she lost the dark saber, she's still the leader, even though she lost to their antagonist. Was there anything in particular that you were like, yeah, this sticks out like a sore thumb during the season?
I think you got them all. I'm sure I'm going to think of something later, but those are the glaring things for sure. Maybe we did want to end on a positive note. It wasn't all bad with some of the good things from the season, unless you had more little bothersome things.
The cameos.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have a good and a bad for the cameos. If we're gonna move on to positive, I'll end with my negative of cameos. The cameos that they had during this season, of famous people, I think they were mostly fails. They probably all were fails.
Yeah.
If you want to be honest, the whole Jack Black Lizzo thing didn't work. Christopher Lloyd, he didn't need to be in it. And Tim Meadows, the ladies' man.
Mhm.
That's all I could think about during his scene, is that he was the ladies' man. I mean, he wasn't horrible in his role, like somebody like Lizzo was, who just wasn't a good actor. But it just was distracting from the fact that we're watching Star Wars.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm glad that there weren't a huge amount of cameos, but the ones that we did get didn't really add anything of value for sure. Did you have a positive that you said you would lean into?
Yeah. I think a lot of people had a lot of theories going into the last episode about who was going to come to rescue the Mandalorians. I'm glad that actually we didn't get a cameo fest in that episode. I appreciated the fact that the Mandalorians saved themselves. They came together to save themselves. We didn't get the New Republic coming in. We didn't get Boba. We didn't get Ahsoka and Sabine. So yeah, I appreciated that. I thought that was actually a positive. Some people would probably think that's a negative, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I'm glad that they did do it themselves and they didn't need to be saved. They're Mandalorians. They're warriors. They fought it through, and that was really cool to see. It was also just another positive, really cool to see all of the Mandalorians come together and unite. That was as much as I am down on Bo-Katan because it's not her show. I didn't hate the whole storyline where she brought them together and we're seeing the return to Mandalore. Just that overall theme was really really cool to see, and seeing more of that planet. Really, yeah, it was just really cool and really well
Uh,
done too. I would say, for the most part.
yeah, hey, as a positive, I think everything looked pretty good. For me. Now I know a lot of people have issues with the volume, and I do as well, but I feel like the volume has been used the best in The Mandalorian. And that just to my eye.
Yeah,
Especially the last two episodes, I think that they were really uh cinematic episodes. I think
for sure.
Rick Famuyiwa did a really good job with the direction of the episodes. But yeah, as far as anything else that was like really great, uh, I think we kind of, touched on a lot of the stuff. Um, for me, I feel like as Star Wars fans, we kind of need to remember why we like Star Wars. I know this is Disney Star Wars, so I totally get it, but um, for me, I actually connect to a lot of the more wholesome stuff that they're, doing. The relationship between Din and, well, both of the Dins, because
Oh
Din is
yeah,
now Din Grogu. That's his name, his adopted name now. So I guess we can call them the Dens. Now the relationship between the Dens, I definitely appreciate that. I appreciated, the stuff that they were trying to do with the Mandalorians and how they were able to come together, and they were able to actually find the faith in Bo-Katan that they needed to find, instead of having faith in an actual, object. I think that that's what they were trying to say with that whole thing with the dark saber. I know that people will disagree with me, on that. And I did kind of appreciate the ending of season 8, or excuse me, episode 8, where, it kind of seemed like that they are bringing back the focus to the Dins, you know,
exactly.
Din Djarin and Din Grogu, and doing their adventures. So I definitely appreciated those things about the season.
Yeah, for sure. I do especially love how they ended off, what they set up, hopefully for the next season, where it's like you said, the Dins back again, and probably more of a focus story on them now that they're not with the water covert anymore. So that'll I'm really excited to get back to that. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. But that last scene with them on Navarro, I was like, okay, I'm happy with this. They had their adventure, and hopefully finally defeated Gideon and had a pretty cool fight scene. And now they're back to chill. They're gonna relax for a little bit, go on their own adventures.
Right. So yeah, I don't know that I have very much more to say. I do wish the season was better overall. There's definitely writing things that could have, you know, been done better, editing that
Yeah,
could have been done better, but I do still have things that I appreciate about the season. So I guess there's that.
exactly. Yeah, there's the with the worst comes the best and the worst that we went over. And it's definitely a mix of both. So it wasn't the strongest season, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a an enjoyable season. So we got a cool story, we got some cool characters, and overall we got the Mandalorian, so that's a win.
Exactly. So I guess we can wrap it up. And I guess we'll be seeing you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. If you've made it far, be sure to leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Do you agree with our rankings? And while you're there, be sure to like and subscribe. We usually stream every Wednesday at 7 p.m. EST. Maybe not this week, but you'll catch us next week. And yeah, talking lots of Star Wars, Marvel. Be sure to join. Thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you next time.